people are so afraid of everything because everything is based on fear. There's not enough food, there's not enough money, there's not enough safety, there's not enough partners. And interestingly, just on the other side of the river, there is a place called Abundance, which is the same kind of place, except people are using a different consciousness. And some of you may have heard me tell a story where it's an old parable where a man was walking through the desert and he came to a city, and there's a gatekeeper at the gate. And the man said, "What's it like in this city?" And the gatekeeper says, "Well, what's it like where you came from?" He said, "Oh, it was a terrible place." He said, "There was no money, and it was a totalitarian state, and there were too many taxes, and people were fighting. It was not safe, horrible place." The gatekeeper says, "Well, you know, that's pretty much what you'll find here." And the man shakes his head, and he goes on. Well, an hour later, another fellow comes to the gate, and he says, "What's it like in the city?" And the gatekeeper says, "Well, what's it like where you came from?" He says, "Wonderful place. Sorry I had to leave, just had to go. It was time. But people were nice, and there were good restaurants, and there were lots of fun, and I had great social life, and wonderful place." The gatekeeper says, "Well, that's pretty much what you'll find here." So the nature of the universe is not really the way it is absolutely. The nature of the universe is the vision that we bring to it. So what we want to do is have a shift in the kind of vision we are using. Everything is seen through rose-colored glasses or dark-colored glasses or clear glasses. And if you are experiencing lack, it's because you are seeing through the eyes of lack. And A Course in Miracles tells us that there are really only two emotions, there are only two kinds of vision in the universe, love and fear. And everything you see, do, and experience is a result of the current vision you are using. So if you are seeing a loving universe and finding evidence of kindness and care and connection and the presence of God, it's because that is the vision you are using. If you are seeing a horrible, despicable, fearful, paranoid-based universe, it's because that is the vision you are using. And so at any moment, the only answer to a problem is to use a different kind of vision. Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem at the level of consciousness at which it was created. In other words, if you're seeing a problem, you have to look at it from another perspective, another dimension. That the eyes of problem do not solve problem. Only the eyes of solution solve problem. In fact, the whole purpose of the problem was to motivate you to go to a higher level and see the situation in 3D rather than 2D. My teacher used to say, she was psychic. She was a wonderful, gifted clairvoyant. And she'd say, most people live in two dimensions, and you're on a freeway, and you're stuck in traffic, and you don't know how to get off or where to get off or it's worth getting off. And she said, if you had a helicopter and you could rise 100 or 200 or 500 feet above the freeway, you would see exactly where the traffic jam is, and you would know whether to get off or whether to wait or how to get off or what to do. She said, seeing through a spiritual eye, seeing with higher consciousness is basically lifting your consciousness to a higher dimension so you see with more perspective than the two-dimensional eye would show you. And I would venture to say that every great person who has ever changed the world for the better, great scientists like Michelangelo or Da Vinci, or great healers like, let's say, Mother Teresa, or great statesmen like Abraham Lincoln, whoever you consider to be a great person has used a different kind of vision from which to approach life and solve problems. Someone said, two men looked out through prison bars. One saw mud, the other stars. So what are you seeing? I used to visit this guy in prison. His name was Rick. And Rick had made a big mistake. When he was in college, he had a girlfriend, and he beat her up. And very sadly, she died. And so he was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to many years in prison, which is where during that time I met him. And my experience of Rick was that he was a good guy, really, basically, and he just made a tragic mistake, but he had a good heart, and in prison he studied Course in Miracles, and he studied yoga, and he helped other people, and he kind of worked his way up through the hierarchy, and he was the director of the prison laundry, and he was a model prisoner. And every year at that point, he was in for 8 or 9 years, he would come up for parole. And the parents of the girlfriend who had died were actually wealthy people in Scarsdale. And every year when he came up for parole, they would mount a community campaign to keep this vicious killer off the streets. And every year they were successful. And I knew him for several years, and he just couldn't get out on parole. And I kind of reflected on this, and I thought, here's a guy who's physically in prison, and his spirit is soaring. Like he was using that prison experience to open his heart and send love and pray and align with God and basically live the best life he could, all things considered. He was in many ways free spiritually. And then here were these people in Scarsdale with a lot of money who had a lot of amenities and political power, and they were still seething with revenge and hatred and lack of forgiveness. And, it just made me wonder who's in prison here. Are you in prison because of your body, or are you in prison because of your thoughts? So it's kind of a funny game. You remember the holodeck on Star Trek? Well, you could walk into a room and press some buttons on the computer, and a computer would create an entire world that you would experience as real. And the more I study metaphysics and spirituality and practice my own practice, the more I realize that we're all living on our own holodeck. That whatever you think is your world is basically some holodeck buttons you've pressed, and you could easily press some other buttons. Now, let me give you a couple of really fun practical examples of how you can shift. Dee and I have been working with this concept called a bubble reality. This is a fun one. Listen to this. I think you'll like it. It means that even though lots of people around you are living in a particular reality which is pervasive and seems to affect lots of people, you have the power to create what some people call a bubble reality, in which the rules and experiences and results are very different than that which everyone else is experiencing. Example, Dee and I went into town one day. It's about half an hour from where we live. And we have to come through this little town called Paia, which is pretty crowded these days. There's a lot of tourists. And we wanted to get home, and we were tired. And we said, well, we also wanted to go to this little restaurant that we like in Paia. And we can hardly ever find a parking place in front of it. And we said, well, why don't we just create a bubble reality? Just because other people have traffic or parking issues doesn't mean we have to. So we said, okay, we are now willing to have easy flow of traffic and parking space. And there's usually this long line. It's a one-lane road, basically, coming to town. Usually a long line takes about 10 minutes to get from this one point to town. And I know some of you on the mainland are laughing because you live in L.A., a place where there's traffic. But for us, we call that traffic. Anyway, so we got on the road, and there was no traffic at all. And it was the height of tourist season, and it was a time of day when there's usually a lot of traffic. And we took this kind of bypass that we usually go to this restaurant. And there were parking spaces all over the place, and there was nobody in the restaurant. Usually people were in at the time. And it was just, we were the only people on the road and the only people in that restaurant. We looked at each other and said, I guess we created a bubble reality. Now, another good example is the economy, right? Because that seems to be a pervasive reality. You hear about the economy with a capital E. Well, I want to suggest to you that there's no such thing as the economy. There is an economy that many people subscribe to, and it seems real because we're all reading the same papers and talking the same talk and making the same financial moves based on it. But simultaneously, there are other realities occurring. And the best example I know is that the two greatest architectural achievements of the 20th century were created at the height of the Great Depression. They were the Golden Gate Bridge and the Empire State Building. One was a public project, the Golden Gate Bridge. Most of the people in Marin County mortgaged their homes to invest in the Golden Gate Bridge, and the Empire State Building was a private enterprise in New York City. Both of them were funded entirely at the very beginning of the Great Depression. They rose during the Great Depression, and they were completed toward the middle of the Great Depression. And the amount of money to create those things today would be astronomical by today's amount of today's inflation rate. So one would have to wonder, if the economy was so terrible and there was no money to be used for good stuff in those days, how and where did people find the money to do it? Well, my belief is they created a bubble reality independent of the mass reality, and they had a very strong intention to do it. The people in Marin really, really wanted a bridge across the bay, and they did it. The people in New York wanted that building, and so they did it. So never, 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 never subscribe to the economy unless it's an abundant one. Abraham says, never face reality unless it's the one that matches your intentions. And we've seen this time and time again with medical diagnoses. I'm sure you all know people who've been giving a dire diagnosis, a dire prognosis. People who are supposed to die soon, and they didn't. They changed their mind. They changed their attitude. My friend Shin Teriyama in Japan was a physicist and a cellist, and he was diagnosed with either liver or pancreatic cancer. Doctors gave him 6 months to live, and I always love hearing that because it reminds me of George Burns' joke. He said, the doctors gave me 6 months to live, but when I couldn't pay, they gave me another 6 months. And Shin went to a Japanese garden, and he began to think about the quality and value of his life. And he began to pray and meditate, and he decided to be grateful. So he started to give thanks for everything in his life, everything that ever happened to him, all the people in his life, even his cancer. He began to bless and thank his cancer as a wake-up call. Well, that was about 25 years ago. A few months later, Shin was given a clean bill of health, and now he travels the world teaching people the power of gratitude. That's his big thing now, the power of gratitude. And just a funny bubble reality story, I met him the first time I went to Japan about 10 years ago, and I just met 3 or 4 people that I got to know as a friend for a bit during that period. And we went back to Japan a year later, and we were walking through Tokyo Station, one of the biggest train stations in Tokyo, and if you've ever been to Tokyo, it's crowded, man. They have wall-to-wall people. I mean, like there are hundreds of thousands of people going through these train stations. And we were going through this train station at rush hour, and who do we see but Shin? 13, 15, 18 million people in that city. We know 4 of them, and they're coming toward us at the height of rush hour. is one of the 4 people we know. How did that happen? Well, that was the bubble reality and law of attraction in action right there. So I'm coming at this from different angles, and I hope you're getting it. I'd love to hear some of you talk. Don't let me talk the whole time. I get bored listening to myself only. Let me hear from some of you, please. Just press star 2. Are we in that mode now? We're in the star 7 mode, so you can just press star 7 and talk if you want. I guess if you press star 2, I'll know it too. But we're coming at this from many angles, meaning that you can shift from anywhere to anywhere at any time. And people will tell you it takes this long to be healed, it takes this long to turn your personal economy around. I wouldn't believe a word of it. You know, I used to go to a chiropractor, and he was a good chiropractor, but he was a bit of a, how should I say it, he had a couple games going, and everybody who would come to him and say, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong with you. You need 28 treatments over this amount a month, and this is how much it's going to cost you, and this is what we might be able to do for you in that time. And everybody got the same diagnosis and prognosis. Well, it's going to take this long, it's going to cost you this much. And it wasn't quite the way the universe works, because some people get healed instantly. And, you know, when we're talking about abundance, the first thing that comes to your mind is what? Money. Well, really, abundance is about everything, because abundant reality includes health. You know, you cannot say you're truly living abundance unless your health is abundant. Now, not to criticize you, make you wrong, you feel guilty. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that why not include health in your abundance mentality and say, well, you know, if I deserve to have abundant wealth, then I also deserve to have abundant health. So let me look at where I'm believing that just because that thing has hurt me, or I had that surgery, the doctor said that's never going to heal, do I really want to subscribe to that limiting belief system? Some friends of mine had a baby, and she had a club foot, and the one foot was at a 90-degree angle to the other. It was severely twisted. And the doctor said, it's going to take about 6 years of treatment. We have to do surgery, brace, surgery, brace, surgery, brace, and we'll keep correcting, and by the time she's 5 or 6, the foot will be corrected. Well, they figured that's what we got to do, that's what we got to do. And during that time, the mother's sister met a man on the airplane who said he was a healer from Guatemala. So she invited him to a party at the house of the family who had the child. And they said, would you take a look at this child? He said, sure. And he said, would it be okay if I prayed over her foot? Sure. So the man prayed over this little girl's foot for a minute. I said, there, I think that should do it. Well, a couple days later, they were scheduled to take the girl in for her first surgery, and they had a pre-op x-rays, and the doctors began to meet, and they conferred vigorously for 45 minutes. And they came back to the parents with the x-rays and said, we've gone over these x-rays again and again and again, and there's nothing wrong with your daughter's foot. Must have been a misdiagnosis. Well, they saw the foot. The foot was twisted. They saw the x-rays. It was obviously malformed. But 1 minute of prayer shifted that reality. So I don't care how long anybody tells you it's going to take to change the economy. I don't care how long anybody tells you it's going to take to get over your grieving. I don't care how long anybody tells you it's going to take to recover from your divorce. I don't care how long it's going to take, anybody tells you it's going to take for anything. It's really possible to have an instantaneous shift. Now, don't demand that. Don't demand that you meet your soulmate tomorrow. Sometimes there's a timing to things, and they happen when they're right. But what I'm trying to do here is to break the spell, break the hypnosis of negative limiting realities that most people subscribe to. Ernest Holmes called this race thought, not race black or white or Chinese thought. He was saying that people have subscribed to so many negative beliefs for so long that there hangs over the earth a cloud of negation which runs much of human affairs. And when you start vibing with that cloud, you send a pipeline to it and you become a part of it. But you do not have to vibe with that cloud. Now, I'm just thinking this. I haven't thought about this before, but I would like to suggest that the smog that hangs over our cities and the pollution that seems to surround our earth is a manifestation of the negative thinking that most people do. And if you think like most people, you get to have it. Let me give you another really cool example. I love this example about subscribing to mass thought. Some psychologists did a study on crossword puzzle doers. And they took a group of people who were avid crossword puzzle doers, and they had them do several New York Times crossword puzzles, and they got an index of their average score on these puzzles, the average length of time it took them to do it. And then they did not let these people see a particular New York Times crossword puzzle one day. And they had them do that particular day's puzzle several days after it had been published. So basically, other people had been doing the puzzle and solving the puzzle, but not these people until several days after. They found that their scores on that particular puzzle were significantly improved. I forget the percentage, it could have been 10, 20, 25%, excuse me for forgetting, but it was a significant statistical improvement over their average scores of doing the puzzle on the same day it came out. Now, why do you think that happened? Somebody raise your hand and tell me, because I like to hear from you. Press 2 or press *7, and we'll hear from you. Why would people have an average that was significantly improved over the other times? Well, I think our system might not be working because I'm not seeing any hands. Either that or you're just real shy. Oh, here, okay, we go. B. Chamberlain. God bless you, B. Chamberlain. Okay, there you go. Let's hear it. What's your first name?
Marianne.
Okay, go ahead, dear. On the day the
puzzle was published, everybody knows that the New York Times crossword puzzle is a terror. So everybody's thinking, oh, we can't do it. And yes. The big red-hot doers, they ran into that cloud, even though they're red-hot doers. But a couple of days later, there wasn't the same cloud.
Well, that's absolutely true. Thank you very much. And there might have been one more element. Can you think of it, or can anybody else think of the other element?
Yeah, they worked it in somebody else's paper.
they worked it in somebody else's favor. What do you mean, Janai?
I mean, they got the paper down the street, and they had one run at it before they came to... Just joking.
Okay. Somebody, thank you. Well, thanks for the levity. Somebody else want to say why they would be improved after other people had done the puzzle?
I suppose you could say the vibrations were in the air.
Yes. Yes, that's it. Not just the vibrations, but the awareness of the correct answers were in the air. You understand? Because hundreds of thousands, however many people do that puzzle, had already done the puzzle. They had figured out the answers, and the answers were now in the collective consciousness of the planet. So it was easier for those who followed in their footsteps to tap into that pool of knowledge. Ooh, this is good. I'm enjoying this. Thank you very much. This is called a Wright brothers moment. Let me explain what I mean by that. It means that before the Wright brothers had their first flight of Kitty Hawk, there was a mass belief that it's impossible for a person to fly in a machine. And so that was the prevalent thought, and no one flew in a machine, they called it a heavier than air machine, until one day the Wright brothers flew in a machine that was heavier than air, and it was not a very long flight. What was it, 20 seconds? A very short amount of time, but they proved it could be done. And from that point on, the world was different because they knew it was possible. They had broken the belief that this is not possible to do. And of course, their work just went on an exponential level after that. Do you know that their first flight was shorter than the wingspan of a current 747 jetliner? Can you believe that? And in just 100 years, well, less than 100 years, I think they were 1904, 7, whatever it was, we went to the moon in 1969. So from the moment that they broke open the belief system that this is possible, in only 65 or so short years, we were on the moon. That's mind-boggling to me. That was a Wright brothers moment. So what this means is a paradigm is that the moment you break out of the illusions that have kept you small and limited and afraid and lacking, one moment of experience that, hey, I can do this. Hey, this is possible. Hey, this is real. Hey, I'm onto something here. Everything changes after that. You're not the same person. The world is not the same world. The same thing happened with Roger Bannister. It used to be believed that it was impossible for a human being to break the 4-minute mile limit. That was like the psychic barrier that people had to break through. And then in 1951, somewhere in there, he went out and did it. He ran a mile in 3:58 point something. And then here's the amazing thing. Within the next 6 months, a lot of runners broke the 4-minute barrier along with him. Why did that happen? Well, he had a Wright brothers moment. He had a Roger Bannister moment. He had a moment when the belief system that said this is impossible was nullified. The holodeck, somebody pressed different buttons on the holodeck, and people saw it, and they agreed that it was possible, and all of a sudden, all kinds of people were running less than 4 minutes. So I want to suggest to you that there is no such thing as a real limit. There is no such thing as a real lack. There is no such thing as a real loss. They are pure holodeck hypnosis illusions. And when you break it for yourself, or someone breaks it for you, see, this is the value of somebody else doing something you would like to do. Let's say you've been wanting a house, and somebody you know who's in the same income bracket ends up getting a really cool house like you would like to have it, but you have not thought you've been able to get it. Well, a lot of people would go to envy or jealousy, saying, that person, what did they do to deserve? They must have cheated. They must have lied. And you would make up stories about what's wrong with that person or why they shouldn't get it. But you don't know how to work it in your favor. The way to work it in your favor is to say, wait a minute. If that person did it, and that person is kind of like me, well, they've broke the illusion for me. Now I know I can do it too. Thank you. Thank you so much for demonstrating to me that what's possible for you is also possible for me. And in that context, you change the word envy. You turn that into the letters N period, V period, NV, which stands for new vision. So never begrudge someone for getting something you would like. They did not take it away from you. They did it for you, so you can recognize you deserve it and can have it yourself. How good is that? I like that. I'll tell you one more story, and then we'll leave the remaining 15 minutes for questions or comments, if you would. Many years ago, I participated in a fire walking workshop. They've been very popular for many years. They were new at the time, and this fellow came to I was living in a spiritual community. He came to our community. He said, we're going to have a fire walking workshop tonight. Hey, cool. So they built this big fire all day, and they let it burn down to cinders and ashes and coals. And he gave us this pep talk. And the time came for those who wanted to walk the fire, 1,100 degrees. And I wanted to do it, but I was kind of afraid, and I wasn't quite sure if I could do it. So I thought, well, let me think about this. Well, the first guy to go was a guy in my community that I had judgments about. I have to admit that I didn't like this guy. I thought he was a nerd. I thought he was kind of obnoxious. And in my not-so-humble opinion, he was not a very spiritual guy. And I admit I had judgments about him. So he was the first guy to go, and he stood before the fire, and he said his prayer, and he walked along this bed of coals. It was a significant bed of coals, and he escaped unscathed. And I'll be honest about my first thought. My first thought was, well, hell, if that guy could do it, anybody could do it. And I kind of used my judgment against him as leverage to appreciate that he could do it. And so I went second. And I said my prayer, and I walked across those coals, and God bless me, I came out unscathed. Nothing really happened to me bad, and it was a great experience about breaking loose. Then a lot of other people went after us as well. And I was so glad that I parlayed my judgments about the guy into appreciation for what could be done. I'll never forget that night. But, I shifted from a reality, I can't do this, to reality, I could do this. And so we all have some coals to walk across in our life, don't we? It's somebody you need to face, or an economic challenge, or a health diagnosis, something like that. So, okay, let's leave the remainder of our call for anybody who would like to share. I think you can do either way. You can either press star 2 and I'll call on you, or press star 7 and you can just ask a question or make a comment. All input welcome. So what would you like to say or share? Okay, let's go to Amy. Hi, Amy. You're on the air.
Oh, goodness. Hi, Alan. It's Amy Starr.
Thank you, dear. Hi.
I'm sorry. I was pushing buttons trying to figure out how to beat you, but it looks like whatever I did worked. So what a blessing to talk to you. I just want to thank you for your consciousness and for your time tonight, and I'm just enjoying hearing your voice.
Well, thank you, my dear. I saw your name on the list. I was delighted to see you. Thank you. How's everything going with you, okay?
Things are going so well, and your voice has just become one that can kick into my brain every once in a while when something's going on, and I just ask the question about what's to happen next. Sometimes I'll hear a voice that sounds strikingly similar to yours, just inviting me to have more ease about it, and it doesn't matter what the topic is, and I really appreciate that voice, so thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Well, ease is where it's at, isn't it?
Yes. All the time. Every time and in every subject almost.
Thank you so much for saying hi. Okay. B. Chamberlain, are you raising your hand again, or you left over from the last time?
No.
Okay, very good. Okay. Good. Speaking of ease, and please keep raising your hand if you want to, just press star 2. I know Amy's in real estate. We had dinner the other night with a woman who, she's a realtor on Maui. She's actually the number 2 realtor in all of Hawaii. And she had just sold a $27 million property. And she reaped the commission from both ends of the deal, so you can do 6% times 27 million. It's a pretty good chunk. And she just has a knack. We asked her, how did you do it? She said, well, I do this all the time. She said, I was showing somebody around, and he was looking at properties, and he said, who owns that property? And she said, I'll find out. And I just called the guy up, and I said, would you like to sell it? My client is prepared to offer you a profit over what you paid for it 5 years ago. And the guy said yes, and the deal was made. And I was thinking, there's all these other realtors wringing their hands about the terrible market and so forth. And she just put two and two together. Well, that guy might like that. Let me help these people. And so she created a $27 million sale in a relatively dry market. So, the question is, what got her to make a win at that while other people are struggling? Well, I think she was just in that win consciousness. And well, I know you're a good realtor too, Amy. So it just reminded me of that.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Awesome.
Look forward to hearing your report about your $27 million sale. Okay.
Right on.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, Janoy is up. Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to thank you for a couple of things left over from the course I took with you under the Entheos Academy.
Yes, sir.
You basically confirmed for me that I should write that book. God, the universe wants me to write that book. And when I decided to do it, I was just overwhelmed with fears and doubts, self-doubts that came up. It was just, it's unbelievable. And somehow, not only did you help me with that, but I've been struggling for something else. And as an aftermath of you and your course, for the first time in over 50 years, I no longer feel fated to have a non-winner script. I no longer feel like it's guaranteed that I'm going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory about what I care about most.
Wow.
So I want to thank you. Gratitude.
Oh. Well, I accept your thanks, but I also want to acknowledge you for doing your homework, brother. I mean, after 50 years to shift your consciousness to I can do this, that's a huge statement about your willingness. So I think all credit is due to you, my friend.
Yeah, well, I've been leaning in the Spirit a long time, and there's something else that follows this. I discovered 2 days later I missed the most important lecture I could have heard from Jack Canfield, even though it was on my calendar. And my way of understanding this, trying to make sense out of it, is maybe I've got 50 years of negative habit patterns, and it's going to take a while to break them all or get past them. But I'm suspecting the more I keep my vision and belief in my freedom for freedom, that'll lose power quickly, and I'll be less negatively influenced. If you got anything positive or to suggest or say about it, appreciate it.
I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna give you a little quiz, okay, Janoy?
Okay.
And everybody else can play with me too, okay? So there's two rooms, Janoy. One in which has been dark for 10 minutes, and you turn the light on. Another room has been dark for 20 years, and you turn the light on. So in which room does it take longer to turn the light on?
They're equal.
Why?
Well, I mean, if it's a switch, but maybe I'm missing the great metaphor here or something.
Because the moment you turn the light on, it doesn't matter at all how long it's been dark. The darkness does not outweigh the light. The light outweighs the darkness. So whether you've had negative patterns for 50 years or 5 years or 5 days or 5 minutes, when you awaken, the dream or the nightmare of limits dissolves, no matter whether you've been dreaming for a year or 50 years.
Well, let me tell you, I love your word nightmare, but it didn't dissolve for me because I've had the experience about 4 or 5 of them the next week and a half, and yet I'm not in the same place. I'm not feeling the same way, and I'm thinking I'll come out of it, but so I'm not sure you're fully addressing what I'm saying.
Well, okay, let's say in the illusion of time that sometimes it takes a while to play itself out. And so how about having some space for yourself and just letting it unfold in your own right timing and trusting that you're doing the best you can and you're waking up at your own right pace and everything is coming to you and going to come to you in its own right way and timing. How's that sound?
That sounds great. That's what I'm already doing, deciding. And I'm suspecting, like I say, the more I go ahead and really believe in my freedom and God wants me to be successful and make a contribution, love, the quicker I'll leave all that stuff behind.
So be it. I'm on your team, brother.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, well, we're coming up on the end of our time together, and I would like to close with a powerful visualization. So, first of all, I want to thank all of you for joining me tonight. It's been a lovely group. We just had a few people speak, but I could feel your energy and I could feel your intention. So thank you very much for joining me. One announcement is that we are gearing up for our next Life Coach training program, which begins September 1st. It's a 6-month training which will enable you to either become a professional life coach or incorporate life coaching principles into your profession or life. It's a wonderful group. It's a 16-person group. There's a very high contact between me and all the students. There's a teleseminar every week for 14 weeks. There's a 40-lesson online course. There's personal coaching with me, and there's a 4-day retreat in Maui. So the group is almost full, but if you'd like to join us, I would sincerely invite you to play with me. Just email or phone my office, and we'll get you aboard if that's your heart's desire. If Spirit speaks to you, I invite you to respond. Okay, so for our final visualization, I invite you to close your eyes for a moment. And I'd like you to imagine that there's kind of a box around you, that you're sitting in either in a very small room or a very large box. And this box represents any limits that you perceive to income, to love, to success, to your play, your script being published, to your book being published, to your soulmate coming, to the healing that you desire. So choose a limit that has seemed real to you. And don't be shy. We all perceive limits. So just pick one that jumps out at you. And now imagine that this box is made of like darkness or like shadows, as you wish, some dark substance. And for the moment, we'll call it like a dark smoke, thick clouds. And it actually seems solid, but it's not. Now, I'd like you to imagine in the center of your chest a light. And this is the light of your spirit. It's the light of your true self. It's the light of all that's good in you. And as you breathe, I would like you to imagine that light expanding. Really focus on this in your imagination. This is far more than imagination. This is actually the process of shifting to an abundant reality by using vision as your stepping stone. And now imagine that where your body is sitting or lying or whatever you're doing at the moment, that this light is now replacing your physical being as your reality. You are now experiencing yourself as a being of light, not simply flesh and blood and ligaments. You're actually up-leveling your experience of identity. Now, this light, the nature of light is to expand and ray out into the universe. So let this light expand beyond the former limits of your physical being, and let it fill this box. The box still seems to be there, but this whole space inside the box is filled with light and pure, positive source energy, which is extremely positive. And now, let this light continue to expand, penetrating the seeming walls that the clouds seem to prescribe, that this box seems to prescribe, to the point that these dark clouds begin to dissolve. And there are different ways to do this. They can all disappear immediately. They can disappear gradually, so they lighten up. They can turn from black to dark gray, to medium gray, to light gray, to off-white, to white clouds. And then those white clouds seem to dissipate, But at some point, the energy of this light is disintegrating and dissipating the illusion of clouds or limits. And as it does, you start to perceive a whole world outside that box that you were not aware of before. And take a moment to consider what your world is on the other side of those clouds or that box. The home you desire, the love you desire, the health you desire, the financial success you desire, the career success you desire, the travel you desire, the world of at peace that you desire. What is happening on the other side of the dissipated illusion? See what you see for yourself in that expanded universe. Now I suggest to you, you are getting to see life as it really is. That you are now embracing and opening and claiming the life you were born to live, the life that God wants for you, the universe as God created it, not as human limitations have been superimposed over it. And there's a big welcome sign that says, this is your world, baby. Step into it. It's all yours. It belongs to you. Claim it now. And so it is. And so in just a few moments we'll conclude our call, but I want you to hold on to the energy of this expanded universe. If you can and you have the time and you like to sit with yourself quietly for a few or many more minutes in this space, I sincerely encourage you to do so. Because what we've done is, as a group now, we've broken through to the other side, and we've now become a vibrational match to the universe of abundance as God created it. I didn't do it for you. You did it for yourself. I co-created it. But really, you did it in co-creation with higher power. That's the game that we've just played. And I invite you, whenever you can, as much as you can, each day, sit for a few or many minutes and open once again to this universe that is yours. And at that point, you will not just have shifted to an abundant reality, but you will be living it. In fact, there's a part of you that is already living it. We are now living in the abundant reality as the universe created it, as we claim it, and as it is. Thank you all very much for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun co-creating with you. Mindy, thank you for facilitating, and I do hope to connect with you again. We'll have another free teleseminar again starting in September. We'll take August off. We'll be back, so watch my newsletter, watch your emails, and I'd love to have you join me again if Spirit moves you. Until then, enjoy your summer. Live in the universe that your heart knows and deserves. And so it is.